All right, guys, let's take a look at another document that I found that is very good, and it has some things on it that my document of summaries does not even have. Okay, so I thought instead of just remaking, I'm just going to include this. So what I like about this, let me just walk you through it real quick. It gives lots of pictures, gives good pictures of especially these types of graphs that we use, summarizes, takes through the residual. Now, this year we didn't go much into this exponential and power model transformation at all because of the 2020 COVID stuff. So that's a little something that you might not be familiar with. I'm explaining the lurking and confounding variables in a picture format. All right, now here's where I think this is very beneficial because I did not have this thorough of pictures in my linear regression information. Especially it has computer printout stuff that I wanted to show you. So I'm glad that I have this document for you. So here it talks about to get that linear regression stuff, you put your data into the calculator and run a regression. But look here, here's an example of a computer printout over here on this right hand side. So in particular, we really want to know what is the x variable, what is the y-intercept, and these coefficients are the slope and the y-intercept. Don't forget that when we write that out as the equation, we're definitely always talking about that this is the equation for the prediction y value, the predicted response, not the actual values. The actual values are all those observed dots. Okay, a quick example of your correlations and residuals and residual plot over here. Okay, and then of course dealing with extrapolation. And it gives an example of finding out the residual at a certain point. Okay. Here is another example of transforming up here that we didn't get to again this year in 2020. Here's some pictures of some residuals and what those would, the issues with them, like how this one fans out so as x is getting bigger. So we don't have that consistent variability, so that's bad. And then this right here is super duper good because what it does is really breaks down this computer printout. So good. It shows you your slope and y-intercept here. Shows your standard deviations. Now, it starts talking about standard deviation of slope. Okay, and we know if we sampled many times, we'd get many different lines, and that's about how much their slope would vary on average. The standard deviation residuals, okay, of the residuals, and so on and so forth. Now, this here has to do with Unit 9 that we did not do in 2020. Okay, when we would estimate a linear regression, we would be actually estimating and predicting slope of the relationship between two variables. Okay, instead of an actual value. The slope of relationship between two variables. And so that's what this takes you into. All right, then it just goes ahead and just lists out some information. Here's a picture of some sampling methods. I think that we've kind of got that down, so we're not so got issues there. This is nice, and it's got some of the visuals of the tree diagrams to remind you of that. I think I included those on my full review of those sections. Okay, and geometric. Okay. Here is something that I left off on my summaries of my units, okay? The combining of the variables, all right? So how you cannot just combine, add or subtract the standard deviations. Those have to be squared, the Pythagorean theorem of statistics. And see, including, even if you are subtracting something, those variances, that uncertainty, that variability is still getting larger, even if you were subtracting one or finding the difference between two unknown amounts. Okay, so this does well going into that. I liked this picture a lot. It talked about variability versus high bias. So it talked about uh, where your X bar, where your sample result fell, your point estimator, where your point estimator fell in relationship to where the true population value is. For example, here we have the population parameter located right here. Well, it doesn't really look as though our data is centered around that location. So we have quite a bit of bias. Plus, our data is quite spread out, so we have a lot of variability. Whereas, see here, our data that we got was around the center of the population. So we had low bias, and in this case, it was nicely clustered around that area, so low variability. And then here's two other situations. This one is centered pretty nicely, so it had low bias, but it was quite varied. So that how helpful is that? Okay, here you had low variability, but it was completely in the wrong location, not centered around where the population is actually centered. So we had a lot of bias, even though we had low variability. Okay, all right. Just quick little um, errors and stuff, and some basic other things here. All right, so I'm just going to leave you. I think the rest of it is a lot of list things. Here's some binomial probability stuff. Oh, this is nice. Summary of like your binomial PDF, CDF, one minus. Okay, I have a whole thinking map for you related to that, but some people, you might like it in that format there. And then with our geometric probabilities and so on and so forth. Okay, I think a lot of that is pretty covered. Here's some more additional, it's the same, we've seen it again. And here is this person's quick reference sheet for interpretations. You might like that. This is some information about the conditions, kind of puts everything all in one page for intervals and tests. And I do like this. This is a one-stop shop for all of the symbols in our statistics course. Okay? Lots and lots and lots of all of the stuff that we've learned this year. Here's a run-through of how do you know which test to do. The z-test, t-test, means, proportions, 1, 2, paired, all of that. Okay, so there are some just amazing documents of summaries that you have got available to you. Just crazy, crazy, crazy. And so I've already gone ahead, and so their final summary review, I have that 1 through 7 summary I did and the video of me going over it. This one is the visual review, and I'll put this video here. And then I went ahead, just for one-stop shop, included the single document that's more specific and has thinking maps and such for every single unit. So I don't know how many pages, all including the StatCat songbook. So I don't know how many pages all of that is together. It might be, I'd venture to say it's in the, 60s, 70s page document. So you don't want to print it out. But in one place, you have it all available to you to pull up and reference if needed. All right, hope that helps you with your AP review.